Hey sports fans, today we look into the dark side of the Baltimore Ravens. Today we'll be looking into DUIs, obstruction of justice, disorderly conduct, felony aggravated assault, cocaine dealing, domestic violence, and even murder. So grab your popcorn and let's get into it. On January 31st, 2000, Ray Lewis was accused of murder in the stabbing deaths of two men outside a nightclub in Atlanta on the night of the Super Bowl. After Ray and his friends got into an altercation while celebrating his first Super Bowl win, Ray pleaded to obstruction of justice, receiving 1 year of probation and was fined $250,000 by the NFL. The crime remains unsolved. On May 20th, 2000, Chris McAllister was charged with marijuana possession after authorities found a small amount in his house while investigating a burglary charge in Baltimore County. The charges were later dropped due to lack of evidence. On May 4th, 2001, Leon Searcy was arrested for domestic violence. He was found guilty kicking his wife in the leg during an argument in Lake County, Florida, and was sentenced to a diversion program and anger management classes. On June 15th, 2001, Chris McAllister was arrested again, this time for disorderly conduct, being accused of disturbing the peace, verbal abuse, and pushing a flight attendant in a dispute over seating arrangements at the Las Vegas airport. There is no record of any guilty or not guilty verdicts and no sentencing records. On September 4th, 2001, Cornell Brown was arrested for possession of marijuana and drug paraphernalia at his home in Baltimore. After complaints from a neighbor led the police to searching his home, the Ravens cut him on September 5th, but re-signed him after the charges were dropped. On March 29th, 2003, Terrell Suggs was hit with felony aggravated assault in Phoenix, Arizona, for hitting a man with a rod when he was a rookie with the Ravens. Suggs was eventually cleared of charges. On August 18th, 2003, Chris McAllister was arrested for a third time, this time on a DUI in Fairfax, Virginia. Once again, the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. On February 25th, 2004, Jamal Lewis was federally indicted for dealing in possession of cocaine in Atlanta, Georgia. Jamal pleaded guilty to using a cell phone to set up a drug deal and was sentenced to 4 months in prison. The NFL suspended him for only 2 games. On 4/20/2004, Corey Fuller was arrested for hosting lucrative card games at his house in Tallahassee, Florida, where a police raid found him carrying a holstered gun. Fuller was later acquitted by a jury for the gambling charges, and he had a permit for the gun. On August 15th, 2005, BJ Sams was pulled over and was accused of drunk driving near Baltimore. He later pleaded guilty to driving while impaired and received probation. Later, on October 3rd, 2006, BJ would be pulled over again, smelling of alcohol, and was charged with DUI and a lane violation. He would be acquitted on the DUI charge but would have to pay $90 for the lane violation. On May 9th, 2007, Steve McNair was pulled over for speeding in Nashville, charged with being the owner of a car driven by a drunk driver. McNair was a passenger in the car he owned. The charge was dropped after the driver pleaded guilty to reckless driving. On December 29th, 2007, Jerome Sapp was arrested for assault after ex-teammate Joe Macy accused him of punching him at a bar in Baltimore. Sapp then alleged similar charges against Macy. Charges were dropped after the two decided not to testify. On June 28, 2008, Derek Martin was cited on possession of marijuana after Cleveland Airport security personnel say they found marijuana packets on him at the airport. The outcome to the case was not released to the public. On August 23, 2009, Tony Fine was accused of assault after a confrontation with an officer in Baltimore who was investigating a report of a possible gun being passed around his group. Tony died of an accidental drug overdose in October 2009 before trial. The suspected gun turned out to be a phone. On December 26, 2010, Sergio Kendall was pulled over on suspicion of drunken driving in Jessup, Maryland. He measured a .17 on a breathalyzer test. Kendall pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 days in a private facility with 2 years of probation. On June 6, 2012, Albert McClellan was arrested for domestic violence against his former girlfriend after she accused him of throwing a lamp at her and grabbing her in Lakeland, Florida. With no visible signs of injury, the charges were later dropped after the woman declined to prosecute. On April 21st, 2013, Rolando McClain was arrested for disorderly conduct after McClain was accused of resisting arrest at a park in Decatur, Georgia. After police responded to a report of a disturbance, he was later convicted of 2 misdemeanors and was sentenced to 18 days in jail. On June 11th, 2013, Damon Berry was arrested on accusation of a failure to appear in court in Baltimore County for a charge of driving without a license in January of 2013. All charges were later dropped. On February 15th, 2014, Ray Rice was arrested for domestic violence after video footage showing Ray striking his wife at an Atlantic City casino, knocking her unconscious. Ray Rice was sentenced to a diversion program. The NFL gave him a 2-game suspension, but then bumped it up to an indefinite suspension and was cut by the Ravens that day. On February 21st, 2014, Deontay Thompson was arrested for marijuana possession in Gainesville, Florida, after a Chevrolet SUV he was riding in was pulled over for driving without its headlights on. The charges were later dropped. On March 9th, 2014, Ja Reed was arrested for battery after getting into a fight at a strip club in Key West, Florida, and was sentenced to a diversion program. On March 24th, 2014, Lorenzo Taliaferro was arrested for public intoxication after breaking a taxi driver's window in Williamsburg, Virginia, while drunk. He was sentenced to a diversion program, and his charges were dropped after he paid his fines. On July 12, 2014, Jimmy Smith was arrested for disorderly conduct after refusing to obey police orders during an incident at a bar in Baltimore County. The charges were later dropped. On February 2, 2015, Terrence Cody was charged with 2 felony counts of aggravated animal cruelty in Baltimore County after one of his dogs died. He was also charged with illegal possession of an alligator and possession of marijuana. He was released from the Ravens the same day. He was later convicted of misdemeanor neglect, but was acquitted by a judge of felony charges. On March 1st, 2015, Victor Hampton was pulled over in Charlotte, North Carolina, accused of driving while impaired and driving 100 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. The Ravens cut him on the 2nd of March. He was later found not guilty. On March 18th, 2015, Bernard Pierce failed sobriety test after his 2014 Mustang was pulled over for speeding in Baltimore County and was charged with DUI. Bernard received probation for the DUI. On March 4th, 2016, once again, Terrell Suggs was arrested after being accused of leaving the scene of an accident and driving with a suspended license in Scottsdale, Arizona. All charges were dropped after Suggs completed a driving class for speeding. On February 25th, 2017, Matt Elam was pulled over in Miami Beach accused of possession of marijuana and oxycodone. Court papers showed that there was a lack of evidence and an uncooperative victim, which kept prosecutors from pursuing the case. On January 25th, 2018, Marlon Humphrey was accused of stealing a $15 iPhone charger and refusing to give it back to an Uber driver in Alabama, and was charged with robbery, and the case was later dismissed by a judge in Alabama. On March 1st, 2019, Alex Collins was arrested after police responded to a report of a car crash and said they found Collins with marijuana and a gun in his vehicle in Owings Mills, Maryland. Collins pleaded guilty to misdemeanors and was sentenced to 18 months probation. The Ravens released him same day. On April 8th, 2020, Ufamba Kamalu was arrested after being accused of domestic violence. Baltimore County Police said the woman had visible injuries. The only information to date is that he was released on $20,000 bond. On March 14th, 2021, Bodrick Washington was accused of damaging 5 vehicles outside apartment complex in Arlington, Virginia. Washington pleaded no contest to 1 misdemeanor and was sentenced to 100 hours of community service. Earl Thomas was reportedly arrested in Travis County in February 2021 on a misdemeanor for carrying a weapon unlawfully, but the case was dismissed after he agreed to forfeit the weapon. But also, on April 27, 2022, a third-degree felony arrest warrant was issued for the former Baltimore Ravens and NFL All-Pro safety Earl Thomas after he allegedly violated a protective order that his wife had out on him. The recent order was filed in May of 2021. As far as I can tell, this is still an ongoing case. And most recently, on January 16th, 2024, Zay Flowers was accused of domestic violence against his girlfriend. Police in Massachusetts and in Baltimore County have yet to answer specific questions surrounding an investigation into the alleged domestic violence incident involving Baltimore Ravens rookie wide receiver Zay Flowers. The Ravens wide receiver has not commented about the alleged domestic incident and is not charged with any crime. The day after the call from Owings Mills to the police, Flowers gave interviews to the media before a playoff game that Saturday against the Texans. We will have to see how this case goes. So to recap, out of 31 players arrested on the Baltimore Ravens since 2000, only 3 players were sentenced to minimal jail time, 3 players received probation, 1 being a player that received jail time, 4 players received classes or programs, 17 players' cases were dropped, 3 are still ongoing, 1 died before his court date, 2 outcomes were never released to the public. Ray Lewis's murder victims still don't have justice, and the NFL only fined Ray Lewis for $250,000 and only suspended Ray Rice and Jamal Lewis for 2 games, later bumping Ray's up to an indefinite suspension. So the question presents itself: how do these players keep getting away with almost anything?